I hope everybody can see my screen. So welcome to this GEMBA Masterclass, and please feel free to switch on your cameras, right? It's nice to see whom we are talking to rather than looking at black rectangles, especially in this period where we have very little social interactions. My name is Dilip Subramanian. I'm an associate professor at NEOMA Business School, where I've been working for some years now. I also am the program director of our flagship double degree international luxury management program, right, called IMLUX. Now, if I've been asked to conduct this masterclass today, it's for two reasons. First of all, I happen to teach a course on the sharing economy in the MBA program, but more importantly, right, I believe that this is a hugely important topic for all of us, right? So because it affects all our lives on a daily basis. So I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you about this very, very topical and very important subject. Okay, I hope all of you can see my screen. Now, so the topic I'm going to be talking to you about, I hope all of you can hear me. If I'm going too fast, please tell me, right, in the chat box. Virginie is monitoring the chat box, and I will take your questions at the end, right? So I hope you have questions, and I'd be delighted to answer them, right? So what I'm going to be talking about today is this very important question: who is actually creating value in the sharing economy? But to answer this question, to satisfactorily answer this question, we need to ask a preliminary question, which is this: why take an interest in the sharing economy, right? And there are two reasons for this. The first is that it's a central feature, right, of our global economy today. It's a global phenomenon. We find it all over the world, okay? And it's growing at a very explosive and at a very rapid pace, okay? Right? Just imagine how dependent we are today on the sharing economy to access all kinds of goods and services. Just also imagine how much more difficult our life would have been during the pandemic without Deliveroo, Netflix, or even Tinder. There's a second reason also, right? 10, 15 years ago, who had heard of Uber or Airbnb? Today, they have become household names across the globe, okay? So it's quite amazing just how in the span of 10, 15 years, right, the main players of this sharing economy have become multi-billion international corporations with a huge footprint, okay? So hence, these are the two reasons why we need to take an interest in the sharing economy. Now, I'm going to show you a very interesting video. It's a short video which will give you a clearer idea about the sharing economy, and then I will resume my presentation.
The share economy, a place where you can get Welcome to the share economy, a place where you can get a ride, stay in a stranger's home, or get some rando to put together your IKEA furniture, all at the click of a mouse or a tap of your smartphone. A share economy is made up of web-based companies who exchange goods and services on demand, usually linking busy people up with those who want to make some extra money. It's an economy built for and by millennials. They entered the workforce during the recession. They can't afford cars and homes, but they can afford some Wi-Fi. And it boasts the crunchy granola idea of empowering regular people by creating an economy that's efficient and eco-friendly. One way to do that is by folks making money on things they're not using, by offering them up at a lower price than a regular business. Take Airbnb. You can find a place for cheaper than a hotel, and as a provider, let some weird Italian couple stay at your apartment over Thanksgiving. Or you can make money on that bike you never use and rent it to someone who wants to get ET home. If it sounds like the share economy is a win-win for everyone, it's not that simple. What if you don't have a smartphone or internet access? The share economy is for the have-somes, not the have-nots. And though a flexible schedule sounds like a perk, steady pay isn't a guarantee. Workers are at the whim of companies who can decrease rates and increase their cut whenever they please, kind of like a pimp. Workers also don't qualify for health insurance, paid sick leave, vacation, or any normal employee benefits that some companies never wanted to pay for in the first place. Then, depending on the company, there are extra costs like gas, employment taxes, and car and home maintenance, things that end up falling to workers. And with all the extra cars on the road, riders and money are being drained from public transportation. When you look at it from a business perspective, the growing share economy has major impacts on traditional businesses. The hotel and cab industries are being squeezed by cheaper and more convenient alternatives. You might be saying, well, hotels and cabs just need to catch up with the times. But traditional industries are, for better or worse, regulated, while until recently, Airbnb and Lyft were not, depending on where you live. And hotels have regular safety inspections so that you don't, say, die in a fire. And there are zoning restrictions. Not everyone wants to live next to a hotel or come home to find a XXX freak fest, 'cause that happened. Plus, what's to prevent a landlord from evicting you and Airbnb-ing the entire building? Not much, 'cause many are. So can you really call this sharing, or is it just business as usual and more aggressive than usual, relying on outsourcing, messed up labor practices, and exploitation? Critics would say yes, but there are some companies trying to stay true to the real share economy. Like Loconomics, a worker-owned version of TaskRabbit. All workers have equal voting rights in the company. Or the numerous taxi co-ops now using apps, the hacker and maker spaces, or bike kitchens in your local gentrifying neighborhood. So is this just peer-to-peer capitalism, or peace, love, and sharing? What do you think?
Oop, let me just, yeah, great.
When the RSA...
I'm sorry. Okay, there are always problems with technology when one is trying to do all these kind of things. Okay, fine. Okay, great. So let me move. So I love this video. It's short, makes lots of points. Okay, and now that you have a better idea about the sharing economy, I can perhaps deep dive into my subject. So my first point is this, right? We need to understand how the sharing economy is different from the manufacturing and the service economies that preceded it, and sometimes also coexist with it. Now, when you look at the manufacturing economy, right, the world of mass production, the big plants that put out standardized goods, large quantities of standardized goods. Now, these were closed worlds. What do I mean by that? I mean by that the consumer, right, was shut out from these worlds, that the consumer had very little influence in deciding what was produced. Now, this situation shifted with the transition to the service economy. The service economy is an open system. By that, I mean that the organization influences the customer, but at the same time, the organization is also influenced by the customer. And at the same time, also, an organization cannot separate consumption and production. And in the sharing economy, right? Sorry, in the service economy, the role of the customer is essential, okay? Think of all the forms of self-service that you need to perform before you can consume, okay? So the participation of the customer is central. Nevertheless, the roles of both the employee and the customer are very, very clearly defined in the service economy. There's no confusion about their identities or their status. The employee is paid to perform certain roles and not the customer. Now, with the move, with the shift to the sharing economy, there was a clear breakdown, a crumbling of this wall between the consumer and the producer. Okay. Today, platforms like Airbnb, Uber, a whole range of them, right, have given us the opportunity to all of us to become a service provider, right? As you saw in the video, you have a spare bedroom, you want to earn some extra cash, advertise it on Airbnb, okay? You want to be a cab driver in your spare time? Hook on to Uber. Register on BlaBlaCar and transport passengers from Paris to Bordeaux or from Paris to Lille if you're driving and you have some extra space in your car. So in other words, right, thanks to the sharing economy, everybody can become a service provider. And so this distinction, which was very, very clear in both the manufacturing economy and the service economy, has totally crumbled. Right? But at the same time, the definition of the service provider has undergone a massive transformation. It is not because you are registered with Uber or with blah, blah car that you are employed by these companies. On the contrary, right? Uber makes it very, very clear that you are an independent contractor, right? You are somebody that is self-employed. And this is the same for Deliveroo and its riders. So with the transition to the sharing economy, right? People who work for these firms have lost the status of being a salaried employee. And this is a huge, huge transformation compared to the manufacturing and the service economies. Okay, so please keep that point in mind, right? And on the one hand, today everybody can become a service provider, but the role, the definition of the service provider has changed, right? It's more and more somebody who is a micro entrepreneur. I'll come back to that point later on. Okay, at the same time, right, with the sharing economy, and this is again a very, very important point, you have a radically different business model. For over 5,000 years, we have always thought that to manage a business, to control an economic activity, you need to own and control assets, be they land, animals, slaves, vehicles, or building. Okay, now this is far less true with the shift to the sharing economy, right? Now, what do we have in the sharing economy? In the sharing economy, right, you have companies that are really not really reliant on physical assets. How many cars does Uber own? Does Uber own a fleet of taxis? No. Does Airbnb own hotel chains and blocks of hotels? No. Okay. eBay, does it have a supply chain? No. Alibaba, the world's biggest retailer, has got no stock. And my last example, Facebook, right, which is the biggest online publisher in the world of online content, it provides zero original content. Okay, so today what we are seeing, all you need today is just a platform, right, which can connect two sides of the market, the buyer and the seller. So what we are seeing are new forms, new means of organizing and structuring economic and social activities. New forms of capitalism that are much less reliant on physical assets, okay? And that is why, right, I say we have shifted from an asset-heavy business model to an asset-light business model. And most of the investments today are not in tangibles, are not in material assets, but they are in intangibles, brands, software, copyright, goodwill, networks, all of that. Now, let me just give you one example. In 2010, Microsoft had a market capitalization of $250 billion. I repeat, $250 billion. Guess what was the worth of its material assets? $3 billion. Okay, so this shows the importance that intangibles have taken today. Now, firms that are asset light and which operate with intangibles have a huge advantage over firms that are asset heavy and are dependent on tangibles. Today, 286 million people download music from Spotify, right, which is one of the models of the sharing economy. Now, suppose tomorrow this number increases to 400 million or even 600 million. The extra cost for Spotify to absorb these new users is virtually nil. Okay. Now, let us take Renault, which exemplifies the old model, an asset-heavy company. Now, if Renault wanted to double its car production, what would it have to do? It would have to build a bigger factory. To build a bigger factory, it would have to buy land, install new machinery, hire more people, all of which would cost lots and lots of money. So what is the point that I'm making, right? The point that I'm making here is that when you're operating with intangibles, okay, right, the cost of expanding capacity, right, the cost of replicating a product endlessly is almost zero. Once you have invested in the platform, right, once you've spent money in developing the platform, you can expand capacity, reproduce your products almost endlessly, okay? And this is one of the key characteristics of intangibles. Intangibles help you to scale up very, very quickly, right? Help you to grow fast very, very quickly. And that is why, right, because they can be used endlessly, they can be used all the time. And that is why we talk a lot, economists talk a lot about what they call the scalability effect. A company that relies on intangibles can grow very fast, very quickly, and become very rich to the point of almost becoming a monopoly. Just think of Facebook, okay? So that is a key characteristic of these sharing economy companies, the ability to grow fast, the ability to scale up very, very quickly. And that is why it's the scalability factor, right? The fact that you can become big very quickly, which explains a key word that is associated with the sharing economy, which is disruption. Okay? Today, everybody talks of disruption. And this is totally true because Facebook, Uber, Netflix have totally shaken up the way that companies work. Sorry, I'm admitting somebody into the room. So what I was saying is that Facebook have totally disrupted the way of doing business, the way we own and consume a product. And traditional brick and mortar companies, this has had a profound impact on them, right? And they're being forced to change their business methods or face collapse. And in a whole range of sectors, health, finance, retail, entertainment, transportation, all these sectors have been disrupted, okay? And that is the key word that is linked to the sharing economy and is related to the fact that companies can grow big very quickly and at very minimal additional cost to expand capacity. I hope my point is clear because this is a key characteristic of the sharing economy. Okay, now let's look a little deeper at the structure of the sharing economy. What are the activities that it covers? So we see there are 5 broad sectors that covers all kinds of activities. Now, when you look at these 5, you can reduce it to 3 actually. First, you have labor platforms. There is people who either transport people or goods, right? Car sharing, or that offer all kinds of services. Do your homework for you, repair your computer, take your dog for a walk. Okay, so those are the first and the third kind of platforms that I've been talking about here. Then you have capital platforms. What are these capital platforms? Basically, where you can sell and lease all kinds of assets. Okay, and finally, you have what I call very broadly communication platforms, platforms that offer a wide range of entertainment activities and social media. Okay, so these are the 3 broad kind of platforms, and within that, of course, you can subdivide it endlessly. Okay, so what I'm trying to give you here is more of an overview. Okay, now when you look at the platform business models, it's a bit like traditional businesses. Okay, right? You have 2. They can either be non-profit or for-profit. Okay, that's one that in terms of the governance structure, or you can have either P2P, people to people, or business to peer, right? And the most common platforms today are peer-to-peer, which connect basically the buyer and the seller. Now, what is the difference between a P2P and a B2P platform? Peer-to-peer platforms rely on commissions. So to increase revenues, they have to increase the number of transactions. Okay, the more riders use Uber, the more money it makes. Right? Whereas when you have a B2P platform, right, they're like traditional businesses. They try to make basically, they maximize revenues, right, on each transaction, on each interaction. They try to get the most money, right, to get the most profits. Okay, so these are two very, very common kinds of business models. Okay, now obviously when you talk of when you look at the sharing economy ecosystem, right, you see three key actors. There could be other actors, but I'm going to concentrate basically on these three guys. Okay, first you have the platform provider, who's an essential role. Okay, then you have the service provider. I've already spoken about this guy to a little extent. I'll come back to it in more detail. And you have the customer or the user. And this interaction between the customer and the service provider is where a lot of value is created, because that is where the service delivery is taking place. Okay, this is the guy, I'm taking a dog out for a walk for this customer, and I'm generating revenue for the platform, to put it very, very simply. Okay, now let's see what the platform provider does. Okay, now this guy has a key role, okay, because he is providing the infrastructure, and he is the guy who's connecting demand and supply. He is basically what we call an aggregator, right? He's aggregating demand and supply. Now, what are his roles? He has got three roles. The first, obviously, is he connects, he brings together demand and supply. He's an intermediary, okay? He connects different sides of the market, and he controls that relationship, right? He controls the relationship between the supplier, right, and the user. The second function he does is he mediates transactions. Okay, if you are going to sell something on eBay, right, you need to be sure that your transaction is going to basically go on seamlessly. So this is the guy who makes sure that there's people pay on time, goods are delivered. So he solves problems and he mediates the transactions. And to do this job, he takes a commission. His third job is also equally important. He basically has to promote the brand. So he is responsible for both the image and for the marketing of the platform. Now, by performing all these functions, these three essential functions, the platform provider, he generates tremendous amount of value. How? By basically stimulating entrepreneurship. Imagine that you want to offer something on a platform, right? By providing you with a structure, he makes the entire business of starting your activity extremely easy. He facilitates, he accelerates the process, and he also makes entering and leaving the platform very flexible. Okay, so this is a key role that he does. So he's, as we said, he's an intermediary, right? And he facilitates this connection, and by doing that, he stimulates entrepreneurship. But there's also a downside. And I think it's very, very important to keep in mind this downside, okay? The platform provider enjoys a dominant position compared to the service provider and compared to the customer. He enjoys a lot of power, and for two reasons. The first is, this is the guy who basically has access to and full control over all the data, right? Over all the rules, over all the processes, right? So he sees a lot of stuff, right, which neither the provider nor the customer can see. So he has got what we call in the jargon a big data overview, and this creates information asymmetries or power distortions. That's the first reason why this guy is so powerful, right? He has a dominant position. And the second is related to the architecture, the design of the platform. Okay, now by designing the platform in a certain way, the platform provider is able to influence and control the exchange between the service provider and the customer. Right? He is able to control who sees what, when, under what circumstances, and what kind of interaction is possible. Okay, so he's basically controlling the entire exchange, the entire interaction and transaction. Okay, so as it was mentioned in the video, he can shut you out from the platform at the click of the keyboard. Okay, so this gives him tremendous amount of power. So we have talked about the platform provider. Now let's talk about the next guy, the service provider. I've already mentioned the disruptive impact of the sharing economy on traditional businesses, but this is equally true for labor. Okay, is not just businesses, traditional businesses that have been profoundly affected and shaken up by the arrival of the sharing economy. It's also labor. How? First, right, as already mentioned, the standard employment relationship, the salaried worker, right, doesn't exist on the sharing economy, right? So we are reorganizing the standard employment relationship first. Secondly, with the arrival of the sharing economy, you have all kinds of new kinds of work, content moderation, okay? Typically the guys on Facebook who make sure that you don't see all kinds of horrific images, okay? Video transcription, the guys who put their little, the price tags on all the zillions of articles that you can see on items that you can see on Amazon, okay? These are all new kinds of work that have been facilitated by the emergence of the web. And finally, the arrival of the sharing economy has also accentuated, I repeat, right, accentuated, reinforced the trend towards flexible work, okay? So these are the three main impact that the sharing economy has on labor. Let's go a little deeper, right? Now, I'm going to show you three images, right? They're all drawn from Uber to talk about the service provider, okay? There's a connection between all three, as we shall see. Now, the term Uberization, basically, we all use it, okay? What does it tell us? It reflects the importance of technology in the sharing economy. Thanks to the app, you can offer a service on demand, and thanks to the algorithm, you can optimize the match between demand and supply, between the service provider and the customer. That's the first thing. Now, the second image actually comes from Uber's ads. Now, see the term that it uses, okay? Now, in the sharing economy paradigm, the provider, the service provider, is not positioned as an employee. He is positioned as a partner, right? And if you look at the small print of the advertising, right, which you can't see, right, or you might not see, it's clearly mentioned you are an independent entrepreneur, okay? So that is how the sharing economy basically promotes its providers. Somebody who has an asset, okay, a very valuable asset here is a car, because the car helps you to meet the consumer's demand, okay? The other image that comes through is this guy has a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom, supposedly, okay? So he's free what to do. He's his own boss. That's the thing that we often use in these ads for the sharing economy, okay? So basically what is being promoted is the image of the micro-entrepreneur and the decline of wage work, of salaried work, okay? Very, very important points, right? The way this, it's the positioning of the service provider. My third image, what do you see here? That this independent contractor, this partner, he's not really very happy always working for Uber. If he was very happy, why should he be protesting? Okay? And they've been protesting against Uber. Uber drivers have been protesting against the firm in lots of cities across the world, okay? Why? Because first of all, that freedom that they're supposed to have is not really total. It's very limited. Wages are quite limited, right? Working conditions are harsh. You can be deactivated from the platform for failing to comply with the rules or not having satisfactory ratings. You all know that at Uber, for example, if your ratings are not above 4.5, right, you can be deactivated, okay? It's not even 4, right? So it's over 4.5, right? So this explains why this partner, somebody else wants to come in, let me admit the person, right? So this explains why this partner, he's not very happy. Okay. On the contrary, he feels that, and what are these drivers arguing? What are the Uber driver arguing? He's saying that I am not a self-employed contractor. I am basically a salaried employee working for you because you are controlling whatever I do. And the courts have given them satisfaction. Okay. Right. So this is the second thing. Hence, a term that the critiques of the sharing economy use, right? They call these guys the cybertariat. Obviously, this is a clin d'oeil. Right? This term is borrowed from Karl Marx, and the term he used was the proletariat. So what are the critics saying? They're saying that this service provider, like the worker in the traditional economy, is being exploited by these firms. All the value that he is generating is not going to him, but is being basically pocketed by the platform. And instead of having a new class of micro entrepreneurs that are emerging, what you're having is a new class of cyber workers. Okay, it's a very powerful argument which cannot be totally dismissed, right? Okay, so that's the second. That's it. So we've seen the second guy. Now let's move to the third guy. Okay, the third guy, who is in the triangle, whom I showed, who is also creating value, is you, me, Virginie, Olivier, all of us. Okay, the consumer. Okay, now the question is, why the consumer? Because we create a lot of value for organizations, and I'm going to explain to you how. The first, obviously, is self-service. To consume, okay, you basically need to undertake a whole range of tasks that have been outsourced to us by organizations, and this is increasing. Okay, every day you go to a supermarket, right? You find that you are having to self-scan the products you buy, self-checkout. You go to the airport, right? You're an economy class passengers. You not only have to check in yourself, but you also have to now register your baggage. Okay, so there's been a quantitative increase in self-service. Now, this self-service is basically obligatory, right? You're forced to do it, because if you don't do it, you don't have a service. You can't consume. Okay, and here you're basically working for yourself, right? You are self-checking out, you are self-scanning your products. But there's another kind of activity which I want to basically, which customers perform, and which I want to, another person entering. So I've let you in, but sorry, what was I saying? So I was saying there's another kind of activity that we all perform, and we are much less aware of, okay? And that is this. Today, we work more and more for others. Who is asking you to post content on Instagram? Nobody. Who's asking you to post your pictures on or your review on TripAdvisor? Nobody. So basically, what you are doing is, through your inputs, you are basically contributing to the business activity of your organization, right? And this labor is free. Nobody's asked you to do it, right? And that is very, very important. Unlike self-service. Self-service, you're forced to do it, okay? Now, self-service has existed for over 80, 90 years, but this working for others is a totally new phenomenon. And that's what I'd like to talk about, okay, in my next couple of slides. And all by both through self-service and by working for others, we as consumers are creating tremendous amount of value for organizations. The title of my slide is important, right? Basically, what does it say? It says that with the emergence of Web 2.0, which is very collaborative, okay, there's been a rise, there's been an acceleration in the trend towards digital unpaid labor. And this is happening in two ways, okay? Now, the first is what I call user-generated content. We all know it. It's a big word for saying something quite simple. Basically, thanks to interactive web technologies, you, me, amateurs, like, okay, we are producing, right? We are generating lots of immaterial content, and which we are supplying free of charge to platforms, right? So today, for example, lots of platforms accept videos, blogs, vlogs, articles, photographs, okay, which have taken time to create, which requires skill, okay? And given this, so they're relying on this input, we have seen, what do we see? That all of this, right? So you're putting up content, the content generates audiences, the audiences generates ad revenue. So we have a whole range of new business models that have emerged, right? Thanks to which rely exclusively on customer input, on your work, my work, and all of our work collectively. That's one thing. Secondly, there's another trend also, which I spoke of this acceleration, the fact that today consumers are working more and more for firms, okay? Now, this is a second way again, right? You, me, we are all creative people. We have creative capabilities as customers. We have skills, we have knowledge. And today, organizations are looking more and more to exploit that. And through the internet, sorry, I have 5 more minutes, right? I have my timer on. Olivier, I have 5 more minutes?
Of course, my dear Dilip.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So what was I saying? So I was saying that we are all we have skills and competencies, and organizations are trying to harness, use, exploit all these skills thanks to the internet. So what is happening today is that the customer, you and me, are being involved more and more in strategic activities like innovation, product design, and marketing to bring out new products and commercials. A very good example is the entertainment industry, right? Look at all your video games, look at all the music, see how much of it is created thanks to what we can call collaborative marketing or customer co-creation, okay, right? So here you're being invited to provide your ideas, and in crowded markets, right, in markets that are very, very crowded, right, the ability to exploit customer skills is seen as a source of competitive advantage. Right? I repeat that point, okay? In crowded markets, what we're able to provide to an organization is essential, okay? So basically, right, and what is interesting is that most customers do not refer to what they're doing as work, right? All this voluntary activity, they don't refer to it as work, right? But because perhaps they don't realize it, but they are contributing to an organization's business activities. Okay, and because of that, we can call them today either informal or quasi-employees. And given this, there's been a change in the nature of value creation. What do I mean by that? I mean that before, the act of value creation was firm-centric. It was the firm that was dominating it, right? Today is becoming much more an act of co-production with the direct involvement and participation of the consumer. Okay, so this trend towards unpaid, I repeat, profit-generating work constitutes a radical and a dramatic transformation in consumer activities. I repeat, it is unpaid but profit-generating activities. How? Either by reducing labor costs or directly by contributing revenue. I've almost finished. I just want to give an example to make my point clear. If I ask you in this room, how many of you have an Instagram account? Almost all of you will raise your hands, okay? Right? Now, Instagram, you must realize, is the motor of Facebook's growth. In the coming years, Instagram, ad revenue from Instagram will represent more than 30% of Facebook's profits. I repeat, more than 1/3 of Facebook's profits will come from Instagram ad revenues. And who is contributing to those ad revenues? You and me, by providing content. But what do we get in return? What economic rewards do we get in return? Nothing. I'm not talking of influencers. I'm not talking of small entrepreneurs who use Instagram. I'm talking of people like you and me, okay, who use it just as a social media. Okay, fine. So given this, right, we have two very different discourses, right? So today the sharing economy is about 12, 13 years old. Okay, so today we have two very strong discourses about the sharing economy. Okay, we have a heated debate. On the one side, you have all these guys who see it as a progressive force, right? Who, thanks to digital technology, it's possible to offer cheap and efficient services. It stimulates economic opportunities. It provides also equitable and sustainable solutions. Okay, right? So it's a force for the better. On the other hand, you have the critiques who say that it's basically worsening the excesses of neoliberal capitalism. It has accentuated social injustice, okay? And to the point today that you have these small startups, right, have become oligopolies, have become monopolies, and they are the ones who are pocketing all the value, okay? Preventing the service provider, the customer, and the entire community, the entire ecosystem from benefiting from this. So you have basically, right, two contradictory representations of the sharing economy, right? And both are equally ideological. And both, because they are ideological representation, they contain a bit of truth and false. Okay, so I just forgot to mention one thing. This explains also why the calls to regulate the sharing economy are growing. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see what Mr. Joe Biden is going to do with Facebook. Is he going to dismantle Facebook? Okay, right? So my last slide, important point, For a long time, we thought the sharing economy was just something transitionary, just à la mode, right? It's a passing fashion. No, it's here to stay. And one reason why it is here to stay is because of the involvement of venture capital, right? Now, venture capital has poured a lot of money into some of these sharing economy firms, Uber, Airbnb, and they want to recover those investments, right? So they will back these firms. It's the whole too big to fail syndrome, right? Like the banks. But I'm going to finish here, right? We need to better understand the organizational model of the sharing economy. This is something we don't understand still. It's not because you have a great algorithm. It's not because you have great technology that you are going to get your consumers, your users to be loyal to you, to use you. And same for the service provider, okay? It's not because you have a great algorithm that your service providers are going to stay with you. And one of the problems that some of these firms are facing and will face, right, is the question of the loyalty of the service providers, because the more turnover you have, it's also going to be difficult for them, okay? So I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions, I'm welcome to answer them. As it's a topic I feel very strongly about. I teach it, I do research on it. So, and I think it really impacts our lives on a daily basis. Okay. Thank you very much for your attention.